Dear participants, dear friends of the Global Digital Encounter, I am pleased and honored to open this 42nd Global Digital Encounter dedicated to patents as a tool for international cooperation and economic growth. The Global Digital Encounter project started now 6 years ago, immediately after the upsurge of COVID. And we decided there was a need in the academic community, in the business community, among our stakeholders and for students to have frequent online meetings. Participants follow online, and also they are able to watch later on the recorded sessions of the 42 Global Digital Encounters that we have conducted up to today. This project is a project run in cooperation between Fide, the Spanish foundation, and the Transatlantic IP Academy. It is a fully pro bono project made on a volunteer basis in order to be able to think about intellectual property, about its future in a perfect free way, so that we find interesting approaches and solutions. The objective of each encounter is not to exhaust a topic. It is to create links, networks, openings of views in order to prepare and think about these topics. And today, our Global Digital Encounter represents a milestone, as patents do as key tool for innovation and economic growth. In our previous encounter, number 41, we explored how patents are providing inventors a safe basis for promoting their research results, though there are also other solutions than patents. Patents indeed allow investors and society to identify innovation, better opportunities, and make them blossoming and playing a role in modern economy and in modern society. In the current encounter, we decided to explore why and how patents, as tools for economic growth, represent key tools for international cooperation in favor of inventions and innovations. So not only creating innovation, but how the international consideration is to be approached. How patent statistics translate this, how patent can favor these cooperations or not, between companies, between research centers, how national, regional, and WIPO patent registration mechanisms facilitate such international cooperation, and what are the limits and drawbacks that may exist. For this panel, we have an exceptional panel and panelists. We've got with us, ladies first, of course, Professor Rochelle Dreyfus from NYU. She's one of the most well-known patent specialists, patent academics. And as such, it's a real pleasure to welcome you again, Rochelle. Rochelle was actually one of the panelists of one of the very first Global Digital Encounters in 2020. And of course, she brings not only a US approach, but also a North-South and Trans-American approach on the questions of patents. We've got the honor to have with us Professor Craig Nard, who is the chair of the Spangenberg IP Center of Case Western Reserve School of Law. He's one of the most well-known patent academics over the US and over the world. When I want to qualify or ask students to do research on patents, I tell them, go and read the Nard on patents. And this says all. So basically, Professor Nard will enlighten us on his immense experience connected to patents and the way patents are useful to create business. Last but not the least, we have the very special honor to have with us, again, this time, Professor Yann Meunière, Professor Nard was also among the very first ones to be speaker at the Global Digital Encounter. Professor Jan Menière was was speaker also at the last session. Jan Menière is currently the chief economist of the European Patent Organization, the European Patent Office, actually, in the EPO. The European Patent Office runs the European system for patents by promoting, by permitting the registration of patents for practically 40 countries plus associated countries, all EU countries, plus additional most European countries. And as such, it is known to be one of the most prestigious IP offices of the planet. Jan Menière, as chief economist, conducts many studies and many researches on the role of patents, on the development of the patent system, on the advantages and also the challenges that the patent system is to face. That's why we are so happy that the three of you are with us today. Most of you know me. I am Laurent Manderieux. I am professor of law at Bocconi University and also chair of the Transatlantic IP Academy and of the European IP Teachers Network. I'm super honored to be with you today as moderator of this current session. The big objective is really to share views that may differ from one speaker to another, and also enrich your knowledge. I have to send also a special hello to our students of the Global Technology course who are connected today, and of course to academics and professionals from all over the world who watch the session and who also watch the recording of the session later on. So, hi everybody, I propose that we start immediately, and we start with a first question that goes to the public authority that is present here. That means to Jan Menière from the European Patent Office. We want to reflect together and consider that, yes, patent systems are fundamentally territorial systems. How can they play a role in international collaboration from the perspective of a regional, hence, of course, international as well, patent office like the EPO? Jan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Laurent, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. So I think it's a very powerful question because the patent systems or the IP systems are fundamentally territorial, and they are dealing with a subject matter that is arguably fundamentally global. When you consider the patent system, it's about protecting inventions, and inventions ultimately are one form of information that in that case is codified, is published, and economists qualify this type of resource information as non-rival, meaning that once it's created, it can be reused without limit, it cannot be destroyed, and it keeps creating value. Take the basic example of the wheel. It was invented some time ago. The inventor is not there anymore, but it's still creating a lot of tremendous value across the world, and it will keep doing so for a long time. So because the idea of the wheel is non-rival, and likewise the idea of the transistor or the idea of neural networks, they keep creating value. They can be reused in parallel by anyone who is able to absorb to master the idea. And so because this information, because inventions are non-rival, they have the properties of a public good, and in that case, a global public good. So it can spread around the world, and actually there is no physical limit to that apart from its availability as codified and published knowledge, and the ability of those who receive it to absorb it, to understand it. That's a very strong limit, actually. I cannot, you can give me a textbook on quantum physics, I will not be able to make use of it. I'm not ready for it. And this has tremendous implications on the organization and the design of the patent system. So one clear example is that in order to be patentable, an invention has to be new, and you have to check prior art, so the existing stock of knowledge of inventions across the world. You cannot just stop at your border. So it's already a fact that patent systems are facing a global stock of knowledge. But there is another issue. It's that insofar as innovation, as inventions are available, are public good, actually they create more public value than private value. So maybe the inventor of the wheel derived a strong value from that wheel, but obviously she or he is not able to appropriate anymore the value that is still created by the wheel. And so there is actually the return to the investment in creation for investor has to be below the social return. And actually, this was estimated. It's challenging to estimate, but there is a paper by Bloom, Shankerman, and Van Reenen, quite impressive paper published in Econometrica like 13 years ago, is assessing for the US that the social return of R&D is at least twice higher than the private return to the inventors. And that means that companies are not investing enough in R&D. And actually the paradox is that in order for the investors to appropriate the returns of R&D, they have to make the knowledge exclusive, to create a toll on the knowledge, and this blocks access and reduces the social value. The typical example, if you forget about patent, is secrecy. So one way to appropriate the value, the benefits of my invention is to keep it secret, but then I de facto limit the spread of the knowledge and the social value of that knowledge. So the patent system has to deal with that paradox and proposes a compromise whereby the inventors are granted a temporary legal exclusion as a counterpart for publishing the invention, for the disclosure of the knowledge, and after the lapse of the patent, the knowledge will be available to all for free. And in the meantime, there's a possibility to negotiate a license, for instance. And to close the loop, that is what is happening, what has been put in place at the territorial level. A patent system is valid within jurisdictions, but in fact, because patent offices and patent systems are interconnected, because they have to deal with the global nature of knowledge. I mentioned already the issue of the access to prior art. So we are striving all the time to collect information on latest inventions in China, for instance, which often are published in Chinese. Also, the fact that a patent system somewhere is publishing patent applications creates a resource for people around the world. I recently read research carried out in Eindhoven showing that for NIH projects for which the scientific papers are behind the paywall, actually researchers in the developing world or in small companies are using patent disclosures actually to get access to the knowledge, to cite the knowledge. So that's one example of the disclosure function of the patent system. And again, it's global, especially today with digital technologies. And that means also that in order for patent owners to have the appropriate incentives to innovate, the appropriate rewards for the inventors, they have also to seek patent protection globally. And this is where things start to get complicated because it's difficult for a company, a fortiori for an individual, to seek and maintain and manage patent protection globally. And so there is a duty on the patent offices across the world to make that easier, to simplify this very complex system.
Thank you very much, Jan. But precisely that brings us the question towards the necessary international harmonization of patent systems, and in which direction should we move? This is something that is very important. We try to create systems that are useful, but in an interconnected world, how do we work for a better international harmonization of patent systems, and in which directions can we go ahead? Rochelle, do you want to reply first to this, and then perhaps Jan would rebound, and Craig as well if he wants so?
Yeah, so So
Rochelle, we can't hear you.
You can't see me?
Your mic is closed.
My mic
I
is
can hear
on?
you. I can hear you.
We can hear you.
You can hear Rochelle? Fine.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
so
Yeah, now
so
I'm okay. Yeah.
okay, so there's an international system. So the World Trade Organization has enacted the TRIPS agreement, and the TRIPS agreement requires every country in the World Trade Organization to have a patent system. And that gives inventors knowledge that and confidence that their output will be patentable everywhere, and they will be able to, reap the private return that Jan talked about. So that's a huge benefit of the WTO system. Every country has to award patents on inventions that are new, inventive, adequately disclosed on a national treatment basis. But TRIPS, the TRIPS agreement, which is the WTO agreement on IP, gives each state room to implement the system as it sees fit. So within certain limits, states can define what the state of the art is, for example, whether inventors have any grace period in which to reveal their invention before they actually go for a patent. And that creates friction among patent offices to have a really smoothly operating system, something that's truly efficient. You would really like to have a system in which every patent office actually has more or less the same standards of granting a patent. So instead of just upper level harmonization top down from the WTO to individual countries, we also are starting to see some bottom up harmonization from patent offices working amongst themselves. So one idea is the regional system, which is what the EPO is. It solves the problem for countries that belong to the EPO. The World Intellectual Property Organization runs this patent cooperation treaty system, which allows patentees to apply in one country and then apply later in other countries. There's now something called the patent prosecution highway, where one patent office allows a claim and then it gets fast-tracked everywhere else. But the patent office still have to be very wary of different standards in different countries. And an interesting feature of current international law has been cooperation among agencies. So the competition law authorities now cooperate amongst each other. The food safety people cooperate amongst each other. And we're also seeing patent offices starting to cooperate with one another. So in the materials, I put a link to something called IP5, which is the European Patent Office, the US Patent Office, the Japanese Patent Office, and also Korea and China. And they are trying to figure out ways to sort of promote a common analysis and bring some bottom-up harmonization to the system to make it easier for patent offices, once one has granted a patent, to allow all the others to grant a patent, because they can rely on the first examination. So I don't know, I'll turn back to Jan. How is this working? Perhaps he knows.
Yes, thank you, Rochelle. I can only confirm what you say and give maybe some examples from the
Jan,
standpoint of
floor is
Europe.
yours.
So yes, so I can only confirm what you say and can provide some examples from the perspective of Europe. So actually, the creation of the European Patent Office was, I think, a nice example of what you said at the beginning. So there were different patent laws in Europe, and actually, the European Patent Convention is a compromise or a synthesis between the German approach to examination and the French-Dutch approach to search of prior art, so search report. So now the two of them are embedded, enshrined in the European Patent Convention. So it takes a lot of energy, decades to reach that point within Europe and a fortiori on a broader scale. Now, as a patent office for Europe, so we have to take the European Patent Convention as it is. So we have no possibility to change the law, but there's still a lot of work we can done, as you said, in terms of cooperation with other agencies. And I would say it's mainly or nearly all about mastering prior art and avoiding work duplication. So really the quality of examination is about having access, finding the right prior art. Prior art is global, and so there is a strong interest in finding ways to collect prior art, to collect data from the other patent offices, and increasingly also to share methodologies, approaches to mining that data. So the IT component is very important, and the way also to organize this information. There's a lot of cooperation at the level of classification. Classification is really the DNA of the patent offices, and for instance, we have the cooperative patent classification with the US, and that is used in China, for instance. The other instance where efficiency gains can be achieved through collaboration is by reusing the prior work of the other offices. So not reinventing the wheel, not redoing the same work twice. So PCT is following this logic. You mentioned the PPH. We also at the EPO have validation agreements or reinforced cooperation agreements whereby third countries even outside of Europe are building on our work actually. So they are reusing the work of the EPO to save time in their own prosecution process.
I could also mention there is now some enforcement cooperation too. So in Europe, there's now this unified patent court. The United States has a single court of appeals for all patent disputes, federal circuit. So that's also moving in a new direction. That's an interesting one. Laurent, we've lost you.
Yeah, I've lost Laurent.
Oh, there you are.
No, we don't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
We got you.
Yeah.
Perfect. I went out and in because for some reason I could not totally listen to the questions for a second. So thank you very much for these insightful comments. I would wish to ask Craig, what alternative mechanisms to patents do you see? What is their attractiveness and what are the drawbacks?
Yeah, I think you could identify, there are several. I think three come to mind. And I think when you look at these alternatives and how they work with patents, there's really no single fix that you would say we should have that instead of patents uniformly. I think most commentators would say you need a mix. Patents decentralize decision making and tie rewards to market use, and that's an important starting point when you look at these other alternatives. And the alternatives that come to mind that are in the literature: government grants, R&D tax credits, innovation prizes, these types of things. There are others as well. I'll say a few things about each one, and I think each one has certainly benefits and its drawbacks and work well with patents. Look at government grants. This is, my university and Rochelle's and other research universities, certainly in the United States, get a lot of money from the federal government, from the NIH. Pardon me?
Got a lot of money.
Well, yes,
in the past tense.
It is diminishing quite a bit. That's a fair point. And it's very good for basic research, where the government can spot high valued work, reduces capital market barriers. You could target specific public goods when you want to talk about information as a public good. The concern, of course, the drawback would be it's really hard. When you have, I use bureaucrats not in any pejorative sense, but you go pick losers, right? That could happen. And all taxpayers will subsidize government funding regardless of who benefits. And in the United States, when a research university gets federal funding, we could own that patent. And a lot of people say, well, there's double taxation. The taxpayers pay for it once through funding and then second time for higher prices. But it's really an information issue on that drawback in terms of how do you sort of pick the winners. But basic research, I think there's a lot to be said for it. R&D tax credits are quite good empirically. They do boost R&D spending. They leverage the firms, the companies' private information on promising projects. You could administer this without picking winners. This has, I think, a lot of upside. it does tend, as a drawback, to benefit established larger firms over startups. And that's something to keep in mind. But R&D tax credits can certainly be positive. The last one, innovation prizes. These, they tend to avoid, when you have exclusivity, the deadweight loss associated with it. The other nice thing about it, it could incentivize sort of neglected spaces, neglected diseases, right? When you have prize money waiting, they don't require the government to pick winners up front. They do it at the end. So you sort of avoid the problem of government grants. The downside, I think, is that it's really hard to sort of right size the amount of money. What is that sweet spot that's going to incentivize people to sink cost into a particular project? And even on at the end, the government, the funder can misjudge the value, right? It could look great, but at least they give greater information after the end of the process. So those are the three that come to mind, again, with the caveat that a mixture of these with patents tends to be the sort of the best way to move forward. What we have been doing is just how do you sort of allocate that?
Thank you very much, Craig, for this comment. And Jan, do you want to add something very briefly?
Perhaps I would just say that I think there's I think Craig said it, and that it's these mechanisms consume a lot of information, so they work when you for a very clearly identified purpose and at the cost of processing in a central manner, collecting, processing information to make a decision. So it's quite centralized, and I think the strength of the patent system as a complement to that, perhaps also its limitation, but it's decentralized nature. So basically, those who want to bet on a project, on an idea, take the risk and take the return. And so the information is processed locally, and it's partly processed locally because the application has to be processed by a patent office, which is quite a lot of information to be processed. But yes, there's this decentralized nature of the patent system, and this is what makes it unique, actually, with the other types of IP, by the way.
Yeah, indeed. It is this decentralization aspect, which is a strength and also a drawback to some extent. Well, I would move to a second question, actually an additional question to Jan about the international innovation trends. You, as chief economist of the EPO, how do you see the international innovation trends and the role of international collaborations therein?
So I think this compounds the argument that innovation is global. So in short, what we have seen in the past few decades is really a globalization of innovation. So there are several ways to look at that. I think the market for innovation is global, or at least in the northern hemisphere. So you can look at the patent applications at the PCT level or at the EPO. EPO as an office of second filing. Actually, we have few first filings, and innovation. It's the gateway for inventions to enter from the rest of the world. So whatever the source, it shows the same thing. We have the rate of innovation as measured by patent is faster than the growth rate of the economy. That's clear for a long time, and so that means that the technology intensity, the knowledge intensity of the economy is growing over time. Innovation is increasingly at the core of the economy and of growth. So that's one thing. Then we also see a rebalancing towards Asia. So 20 years ago, the world of innovation was mainly on both sides of the Atlantic, right? US and Europe. And then Japan emerged, and what happened in the last 20 years is the very impressive emergence of South Korea and China. So if you take the figures from the EPO, but again, that's just one example. It's the same everywhere. Well, these countries regularly posted double-digit growth in terms of patent applications with us. So and now they are on par with the other main regions of the world. So with the US, Europe, and Japan in terms of innovation capacity. So we really have a rebalancing. And perhaps the last main trend I would mention is also a rebalancing in terms of growth drivers. So what are in terms of technologies that are driving the growth? So traditionally, the patent system was dominated by chemicals and pharmaceuticals and mechanical industries, especially in the automotive sector. So they are still very important. But really the massive fact of the past 20 years is the emergence of digital technologies. So computing, telecommunications, now artificial intelligence, and all of that combined actually into smart connected objects. And actually we see them emerge not only as one vertical, but as an enabling technology that permeates all sectors and that transforms innovation in all sectors. And this is very much correlated with the fast growth of Korea and China, because they are really at the forefront of innovation in digital technologies, in computing, in telecoms. And perhaps the last, besides that, there are some smaller, though quite significant trends, transformations like pharmaceuticals is muting actually from chemicals driven to biotechnology driven. It's very clear. So now it's all about biotechnology with important implications in terms of how the patents are used, by the way. And the very recent trend for 5 years, 10 years is, I would say, electrotechnology. So anything related to the energy transition towards electricity. So not so much renewable energy, but energy storage, batteries, electric vehicles, grids. That's really exploding. And again, that's mainly coming from China and South Korea.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this insightful information, which we really represent national and international challenges. And precisely, we can reflect on the importance of patenting or not for an industrial sector or another. For example, healthcare versus biotech versus telecom versus AI industries in general. Craig, what are your views on this? Do you see that there are some sectors that benefit more from patenting and others that, on the contrary, should or are less active on patenting? I think this question is so important in the current international race and also in the company race that I shall ask the question to the three of you. So Craig first, and then Rochelle, and then Jan.
Yeah, this is such a big question, and I know Rochelle and Jan have a lot to say on this as well. You know, if you start with the question, do patents benefit society? And I think that's the lens that you have to view the system through. That's a really hard question to answer in terms of the overall patent system. I think there are real measurement issues there. But if you break it down by sector, as you suggested, Laurent, things become a bit more clear. I think that once we understand, and Jan said this well in his opening remarks earlier, that we have a public goods problem, is non-rival, non-excludable nature of information, and patents are a way to solve that, this public goods problem, you know, so Kenneth Arrow's famous information paradox. When you break it down by sector, I think it's clear that life sciences, biotech, pharma, medical device, and I would throw chemicals in there as well, have sort of a net positive on society. Once you move beyond those industries, it becomes less clear. I think we need more nuance when it comes to that. You know, a few things to consider. One is, and again, Jan mentioned this, that you know the real benefit of patents is that the disclosure, there are these incentives to disclose, and you have these knowledge spillovers, these positive externalities that could lead to improvement and follow-on innovation. They facilitate markets for technology, dynamic competition for design around activity. All that is true generally. But when you look at other industries, say software, electronics, mechanical engineering to some extent, we tend to think that maybe first mover advantages, secrecy, lead time, branding, these types of things play a very important role, either complementing or supplanting patents. We also worry in some industries like electronics and software about patent thickets and hold-up problems. You see this in telecom and semiconductors. The other thing is sort of patenting. We know that a small percentage of patents are commercialized. And, as I tell my students, if we talk about patents benefiting society, the most direct benefit is when you could go to the druggist or the pharmacy and pick up your medication. And so a lot of times firms strategically patent for defensive reasons or bargaining leverage without commercialization in mind. Now that cost is offset a bit because the disclosure is there and others could use. And we know from economic historians that the more broadly disseminated technical information is the quicker the pace of innovation. So that strategic act of not wanting to commercialize, you still have to disclose and others could use that disclosure. Sometimes we see a weaker overall impact on R&D through patenting, general cost to society. So I think we could say, and I'll sum up here, with life sciences and chemicals, I think patents have a net positive role in society. Beyond that, it becomes a weaker argument and more nuanced argument. It's not to say patents are bad for them, it's just that it's not as clear.
Thank you very much, Craig. Rochelle? Rochelle has disappeared for a second, so we'll ask Jan first while Rochelle comes back.
I think Rochelle is muted. If she unmutes, it will work.
No, above all,
Okay, so all right,
yeah.
am I unmuted now? Okay.
No, you're good.
All right. Yeah. So I've gone in and out on the system. Sorry about that. So I come from the pharmaceutical industry. I used to be a chemist at Novartis, and you can understand why the chemical industry would really need patents for small molecules. Once you see a small molecule, it's relatively easy to figure out how to synthesize it. And generic companies can do it sometimes even more efficiently than the originator. But there's another end of this spectrum of industry, which we haven't really much talked about, and that's artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is kind of the absolute opposite. First of all, there are a lot of things, a lot of advances within that industry that probably are not patentable, like algorithms, which are just basic relationships between factors in society. Training data is not patentable. It might be copyrighted, but not even to the owner of the AI. And on the other hand, in AI, it's very possible to keep trade secrets. Usually, trade secrets can be reverse engineered, but these algorithms cannot be reverse engineered, and you can't figure out what the training data is. So the AI companies can be very sure that they're going to be able to monetize their trade secrets and keep those trade secrets for a very long period of time. In the middle, I think maybe is the biotech industry. So this is the different small molecules in the pharmaceutical industry, large molecules, the kind of things that get infused or injected in the biotech industry. They've got platforms that are susceptible to trade secrecy protection, and they have methods of making these very large pharmaceuticals, these large biologics rather, can also be kept as trade secrets. And so there is trade secrecy creeping up in there. And I think the regular pharmaceutical industry is learning a little bit about platform technologies, about the use of data exclusivity as opposed to exclusivity on the molecules themselves. And so we're moving into some territory that I think Jan mentioned right at the beginning, and that's the fact that trade secrets don't disclose, and they allow people to keep all the information private, and they don't, in fact, create public information that people can build on. On the other hand, trade secrets are very useful for collaboration. People want to be able to share trade secrets, to collaborate with each other by sharing their trade secrets. And so there are some positives to them as well. But on the whole, it would be good to find some way to have trade secrets that also promote some form of disclosure.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Jan, you want to add something?
Yeah,
For sure.
Yes, thanks. Perhaps 2 points. So I would also go back to or three. I think definitely there is a huge variety in the way in which the patent system is used between sectors, clearly, and that reflects this one size fits all, this plastic nature of the patent system that is then adapted, accommodated differently depending on the economic and the technology context. There are two, I would say, there are two constants though. One is the trade secret versus patent. So indeed, it's a matter of balancing what is kept secret, what is patented. Typically, industries where the technology is very much in a product, a fortiori a product that is easy to imitate and that takes a lot of money and time to bring to the market, like in pharma, they need the patent there. While when it's in the process, it's easier to hide, and there's perhaps less of a need to patent or patent so intensively. I think, though, in practice, I tend to see that as an iceberg. So there's the iceberg of knowledge, and the one part of it is visible, it's the patented part, and the rest is trade secret, is know-how, and the proportion varies from sector to sector. But I think usually it's important to have one visible part, one protected part. Coming back to what Rochelle was saying, I think one important trend in all sectors is that innovation is increasingly about transaction. Organizing transactions focused on knowledge. So knowledge becomes a currency, a tradable asset. And in order to organize the exploitation of knowledge, you need to divide work. So take pharmaceuticals, the evolution from pharma to biotech. So it's coming from the university and then to a biotech and then to big pharma. And along these chains, you need to manage the transfer of intellectual property. And we see it likewise in the digital space. So if you take semiconductors or telecom standards or codecs, it's huge technology platforms with technology building blocks coming from all around the world, and there's a need to aggregate all of that to commercialize it while sharing the pie then between the different contributors. And I'm not saying the system works perfectly efficiently; it does not. But that's a way to allocate property rights to organize transactions, actually.
Thank you very much. As moderator, I'm very much struck by the comments, the replies of the three of you, where the big dichotomy is between trade secrets and patents. Had we done this Global Digital Encounter 10 years ago, we would have spoken, of course, of this dichotomy, but we would also have discussed a lot the issue of patents versus copyright, open models versus closed models, and so on. And this shows that there is an evolution that artificial intelligence and digital systems has brought forward. The dichotomy with copyright hasn't disappeared, but is less in the focus. The focus for industry, at least, is really much on trade secrets versus patents. That's something that's quite a fascinating conclusion of one of the conclusions of the first conclusions of today's encounter. I would wish to move to question 4, to the fourth questions I thought about, which is companies' cooperation versus companies' race, and sometimes countries' champions race, companies' champions race. How patents may help or not help incorporating and competing for innovation. How can we identify this? And for this, because Jan, under your authority, you have the immense portfolio of analyzing the patent statistics from the EPO's point of view, but also at global level, I think that we would be much interested to have your views on this.
Okay, so that's not an easy question.
Not at all.
I think at a macro level, I would continue on this idea of transaction and collaborative nature of innovation. So this is also what we see in the data. I mentioned that 20, 30 years ago, the world of innovation was on both sides of the Atlantic. That's still true when you look at co-invention or co-patenting. There's a lot of integration between the US and Europe when it comes to R&D and patenting and technology commercialization. More generally, the US has a huge network of US companies of co-patenting and co-innovation with the rest of the world. Europe is more inward integrated. US really has a hub, a global hub, sourcing, for instance, a lot of innovation from India, but also from South America. So that's definitely in the data we see this cooperative nature of innovation. Then at the micro level, so we also in terms of providing examples. I think that the examples, the co-opetitive nature of patents go beyond simply co-innovation or co-invention or co-patenting. I would just mention a case study. Actually, we carry out we produce a collection of case studies of small businesses, of startups, which I think is very useful to get insights into how patents are practically used. And I would just cite one as a good example. It's an Irish company called Aerogen, and they have developed a breakthrough technology for nebulizers, so in the health tech. And as a small company, so they have built a strong portfolio. They are competing with companies like Philips or GE Healthcare. And actually, what they have done is to brand their product and market it in some markets in Europe, but they didn't have the muscle to do that in the rest of the world. So what they do is they have strong patent portfolio globally, and they license their technology to Philips or GE, who commercialize it under their own brands. And I think that's a nice example of how to use IP to navigate competition and collaboration. It gives the flexibility actually to organize transaction, to deploy technology.
Thank you very much, Jan, for this example and for this explanation. Craig, Rochelle, you want to add something on this?
Yeah,
I see that Rochelle is ready to.
Yeah, so when I started being a chemist, we had this concept of not invented here. You just wouldn't take something that wasn't invented locally. The companies were extremely vertically integrated, and you did everything. And that's completely broken down now. And I think it is this international patent system that has helped that happen, because you don't have to specialize in everything. You can find a small company, license out the technology, and that is a much more efficient way in which to advance the frontiers of knowledge. So it's a real, I think Jan's example was just an excellent one of how companies are changing the way they think about where they take on technology, where they do it in-house. It's not the same system as it used to be.
Indeed. There is this major revolution on the way the appropriation of knowledge and the sharing of knowledge is developing. It may be, by the way, that with the rise of artificial intelligence companies or mega companies, we go towards an opposite direction. So it's up to now, I fully share your views, Rochelle. There is a trend of 4 centuries of progressively unlocking this, but shall we go Shall we continue going in this unlocking direction? This is an interesting question mark that the next decade will probably tell us more about. Craig, Jan, you want to add something on this?
I think Craig said it a few minutes ago, that the speed of innovation is higher when the knowledge diffuses, and that's really the challenge. That we are facing globally. If it fragments, it will slow.
Yes, exactly. I totally share your approach, and if it's fragmented, we may go from an academic point of view. I may say that we may go to the wrong direction. Well, we are getting close to the end of this global digital encounter, and I think we could reflect a lot in various directions that are really food for thinking for our audience and for all those who will watch this global digital encounter. In conclusion, I would wish to ask each of you one question. Does the patent system is a one-size-fits-all system in the way as it is? Is the one-size-fits-all patent system currently the only one that can develop this way? Do you think it should develop this way? Does it embrace the needs of all stakeholders, in particular developing countries, in particular also highly developed countries? So this is a major question. And I would wish to give, as we are a bit short of time now, 1 minute to each of you, starting with Rochelle, then with Craig, and with the final word for the EPO representative for Jan. Rochelle?
Yes, so my view is one size doesn't fit all, but one size can be tailored to fit every country. And so Jan mentioned the Asian tigers, this developing market in Asia, and there's a whole cottage industry of what's called catch-up research, not tomato sauce, but how is it that the Asian tigers caught up? And I put a paper from some Koreans into the materials. And what they seem to realize is that TRIPS can really be tailored to their needs. So it allows countries to demand that patents be worked locally. It obliges developing countries to transfer technology. It was sold as supporting foreign direct investment. It also allows countries to offer utility model protection, sort of petty patents for advances on a kind of lower step in the technology ladder. And so what these Asian tigers did was they started by imitating foreign technology, but quickly moved to local adaptation and incremental innovation protected by utility models. And that created a culture and an ecosystem of investors and inventors and entrepreneurs and lawyers, demand for public investment in education to build human capital, leading to what we now see as inventiveness at a global standard. So one size can be tailored to fit all.
Thank you so much.
That's well said. Yeah, I would simply add to that. I mean, if you could think of it in terms of procedural one size fits all and substantive one size fits all. With procedural, we've seen the benefits of that, the efficiencies of it, the cost savings of it. That makes sense. Substantively, and Rochelle has written on this, and I have very little to add, but we have to be concerned with potential harm for developing countries, notions of sovereignty. Nations could lose policy flexibility to sort of tailor IP to their national goals, exceptions for public health, agricultural, TK, these types of things. There is evidence that suggests that if you're to sort of ratchet up substantively, patents may help mid-level developing countries in terms of foreign direct investment, but have unclear or sort of limited effects on LDCs in the poorer countries. So substantively, I think you have to be really careful. The bottom-up approach, the Asian example that Rochelle gives, is that let that happen organically, and sort of they want to ratchet it up, go ahead, but to sort of impose it top-down, I think we have to be really cautious about that.
Thank you very much to both of you. In particular, we should also consider the fact that having common rules is also apparently the most fair system, but may also be a very dangerous system. So because we are not all equal. So this is the big ambivalence of this tricky question. And now I give the floor to Jan.
Thanks. I would concur on both of you made the argument that it's one size fits all, but with the flexibilities to accommodate local realities and priorities. I think it remains challenging. If we look at the past, so the patent system has survived several industrial revolutions. A long history already by muting, by adapting. So I'm confident that it will keep doing so, but it's more challenging than ever. So you mentioned the geographical dimension, focusing on, from my side, on the working of an office. We have to deal with the speed of innovation, globalization, of course, so increasing speed of innovation and digital technologies, artificial intelligence, and they are transforming not only the inventions that are coming to us, but also the way we work. So this is our next challenge, I would say. So let's hope we will manage that.
Thank you very much, Jan. I think, thanks to the three of you, I think that an hour has elapsed in a second. We could have continued we could continue for the whole next hours, but we won't. The idea is and was that through this Global Digital Encounter, to open minds, to open areas of reflection. I have posted links on the EPO's work, on Professor Craig Nart's major book, on papers recommended by Professor Dreyfus, including the one connected to the Republic of Korea. And I think that the big idea is to reflect all together how we can construct, build bridges that serve all our constituents. As a matter of closing down this event, I would wish to thank warmly all those who attend. Professor Michael Guides from the Global Technology, the organizer of the Global Technology course of the Universities of Ottawa, Bocconi, and Haifa, and some of our students who are present here. Of course, I saw in the list of the participants who are live now, Professor Alison First from the EIPTN committee, Professor Dana Beldiman, and other colleagues, Professor Raul Ruiz Rodriguez from the University of Alicante, and other professors from all over the world. I am super happy and honored that you follow, all of you, our activities, colleagues, professionals, students. You'll have access to the recording in a few days and also to the report of this event. Of course, this event doesn't really stop because the speakers always remain available to the public in order to reply to your questions later on. So feel free also to contact us for any follow-up question. This goes without being said so. And we shall meet very soon for another Global Digital Encounter on another cutting-edge topic. Yes, patents, though an old IP right, are a cutting-edge topic and a topic that brings forward wealth of nations, wealth of individual, economic wealth, but also social wealth. And this is something that we most like. Patents bring them so. Limits to patents bring them so as well. And this is why we are here to discuss all these issues. Thank you for your kind attention, and see all of you very soon for another thrilling Global Digital Encounter. Thanks to our three speakers who were
Thanks, everyone.
fantastic today.
Thank you. Yes.